And then when that's open, when we have that account open, and I haven't had that confirmed yet, we'll put that in, and that'll mean we'll have something like it's £946 in the account then. So then we'll be able to decide what we want to do with it as a group. It won't be under the auspice; it'll be under the control of the sort of treasurer of the whole committee. But we can use it as we wish. It's obviously our money. So that's where we are with the money. So that I think we're okay with that. As far as the maintenance of the community areas, I was wondering if we could have a go at cleaning up the old school garden sometime in the next couple of weeks, and if we can agree a time somewhere, just sometime, just to go along there on a Saturday or Sunday or a day in the week to just go and do some maintenance there. So basically, just to rake off the paths and tidy up the areas, the fallen trees and things. Okay, so are we okay with doing that sometime?
Oh, it's Jackie.
If I ask you to if I give you some dates, and hi Jackie, to see if we can go and do some work there. It's not a heck of a lot of work. It's just basically to rake up the areas. Are we okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. Right. The other thing is that the new seating, I don't know if you've been there, but the old school garden now, the seating has been placed in the old school garden. So there's five seats in the old school garden, which obviously, we can now use. And the one that was outside the clay pits has now been put in the mountain chapel, so people can, when they want to walk around the village and take a spell somewhere, sit down, they can obviously sit in those areas. So that's thanks to the community council for that. But that's made a difference. And obviously we've got the other one that's at the clay pits as well, and the other one at Stanwell. As far as last month, I think Terry mentioned about tree planting at Stanwell, and she asked her whether we could have a memorable tree, a tree of something like a cherry tree or something like that to be planted there, because obviously we've got a seat there. We're thinking about having a sort of memorable tree, like something that would make it look really a nice area. So subsequently, she did suggest that we talk to Tony Brinsden, who had given the land to the county council. So I spoke to Tony, and he wanted to have a copper beech put there. So we have asked the community council if they'll fund the 3 trees, an acer, a cherry tree, and also a copper beech. So the 3. As far as I know, they've agreed to that in the last meeting, so we should have some news on that soon from them once I get some feedback from Catherine, who's the clerk to the community council. So we'll be planting some trees there. If we want to plant other things there, I'm sure that things like bulbs and things like that, I'm sure we can do that going forward. So we'll just see what's available and just source them if we want to ourselves, or see if there's other opportunities out there. Because Ruth, I think you mentioned that the local places for nature keep Wales tidy. There's also now another sort of application going in for pollinators, with a theme for pollinators and fruit trees and bushes. So we are going to apply for that. So we might be able to put something else in that area, like for example, sort of fruit trees and bushes and also wildflowers and so forth. So we'll see what we can do at Stanwell. I had a contact from a guy called Chris Taylor, he's the National Parks warden, and he wanted to give us a talk on pollinators. He's starting off a project in the Amroth Community Council area, and obviously we can't have a presentation in the village hall, so I wanted to find out a little bit more from it. So I think Pauline and Sue are going to go along to a meeting with him at Amroth Summit Hill Hall on the 4th of May, so we can find out a little bit more about what the pollinator project is involved, what's involved in it, and also if we can get involved in doing something in our area. I didn't really want to get involved in sort of Amroth area because we've got enough to get on with in our areas. So I wanted to focus on maybe the Old School Garden, the clay pits, and the Mountain Chapel. But we'll see when Pauline and Sue go along to the meeting. We'll find out what they want to do with the pollinator project and what we can do. Because obviously we did at the last meeting mention about the county council sort of cutting hedges and cutting grass along the minor roads, and we did voice our opinion there. I think Terry sent an email, I sent an email to the community council asking them that can they be a little bit more sensible when it comes to cutting back the verges, especially at certain times of the year when, you know, okay, I can understand when it's with regard to safety, but when it's the grass is dying back and that those wildflowers are dying back, we need to sort of not to sort of damage them so much, and likewise the hedges. So we did get some feedback which basically said that, you know, they are looking into it. So we'll see what transpires there. As far as the summer walks and talks are concerned, right? I won't give you the dates, but well, I will give you the dates, but I won't. You don't have to make a note of them. I've got at the moment Clongarreg on the 15th of May. I've got Aberglasney on the 12th of June. That's a walk and talk with both. At the moment, I've got Towygate with Piers Lunt on the 10th of July. I've got Glenbach then on the 8th of August, and that's where the Menadas are. The lady Carol Whittaker was on Gardener's World about 4 years ago, and she's got a collection of Menadas. So she said that's the best time to come. So the 8th of August, we've got that. And then we've got Upton Castle on the 1st of September. Right, so that sounds okay at the moment. But what I was waiting for a confirmation from Towie Gateway project. Now the Towie Gateway project is still progressing at the moment, and it should finish, most important thing is the toilet block and the cafe should be open on the first week in September. So what I'm thinking about is swapping over the Upton Castle and the Gateway visits on the 10th of July and the 4th of September, swap those over so we can go to the Towie Gateway project on 4th of September and Upton Castle earlier on in the year. So I'll confirm that once I've swapped them over and confirm that everybody's okay with it. But those are on the diary, and then if you want to do any others in between, whether it be the National Garden Scheme and those other places we can go as well. But I thought I'd start off with some firm dates. But don't worry, I'll give you an email following this so that you can actually see what we're actually doing. Right. Do you want, Pauline? Do you want to mention the plant sharing at the moment? We obviously thinking about if there are plants that you've got surplus of, then we can share them. So
everybody said the same as you, Roy, about sharing surplus. So one or two people have said, like Rosie and Gwen said, they'd give collies and cauliflowers, and I think it was cucumbers. Other people have mentioned certain things. We said we'd do aubergines, which we have done, but there'll be surplus, like Carolyn and Mike, and I think Andy said, any surplus leftovers they would like to donate to other people and do a swap. Now I was talking to Rosie and Gwen a couple of weeks ago, and Rosie has very kindly offered us her land to go and meet, because the problem was we needed somewhere big enough for everybody to come at the same time, get all the stuff out and ready so that we can all swap it. So Rosie said, oh, I'll come to my place. We've got plenty of room here. So thank you very much, Rosie. Very generous of you. So I'm thinking, I'm thinking maybe the end of the month, I mean, how does everybody feel? I'm not sure where everybody's up to with their produce. Do you think you'll be ready by the end of the month? End of May, that is, not end of April.
All right.
End of May, should be all right.
Yeah, that should be all right, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we
that
have,
sounds-
Yeah,
I suppose another month
So-
we might have something like
Yeah.
right. Well, if I get in touch with you, Rosie, nearer the time,
Yeah,
see
okay.
what date suits you for people to come. And then I'll send an email around to everybody, and hopefully that's a date that everybody can make.
Yeah,
How does that suit?
yeah, that's fine.
That's good.
Okay,
Okay,
The only
thanks.
thing I would say, Pauline, is
right.
I've got some surplus tomato plants available now,
Oh, excellent.
and I doubt they'll still be available by the end of May. So if anybody wants
Right.
tomato plants, then let me know.
They can
You're-
call you.
All right then. Shall
Yeah.
I'll send an email round to everybody and see if anybody comes back with that. And
Okay.
then I'll pass them on to you.
There's
Oh, that's brilliant.
two varieties. One is Berner Rose, which is a lovely largish tomato, very fleshy. And another is Tigerella, which is this one of the cherry tomatoes.
Okay,
Right. Yeah,
Thanks,
we're
Andy.
doing tigerellas as well, but it looks like
Yeah.
we won't have any leftovers this year.
Okay,
Very
Pauline.
good. Thank you for that, Andy.
Thanks, Pauline. Thank you. So, Pauline, if you can send the email, I can
Okay.
go from there. I think I've got some more. I've got some surplus tomatoes as well. So yeah, I'm sure we'll. If anybody wants any. Just
Yeah,
get in
I think
contact as well.
somebody else said they'd got tomatoes as well.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I missed one thing out. The virtual summer show at the moment. I mean, obviously it's early days yet, but you've all got the email address that Ruth will pick up on then when the items come in. We've got the judges in place, so we've got the judges in place for all of it. So obviously that'll progress through the summer and then end at the in September then when we like as we did last year really basically. I mean I can't wait for the day when we actually do have a show in the village hall, but at the moment it's a virtual show, and the rules are obviously available on the website as well as on various other places like there's emails that I send out as well. So
Roy?
yes.
Can we just sort of send them in when we've got them ready?
Yeah,
We don't have
just
to wait.
no, just send them in when you're ready. If you've got something that's, you can do it
Okay.
as you progress. So if you've got something that's mature at the moment and you want to put it in, you just put it in, and Ruth will do the rest, I'm sure. Thanks,
But
Ruth.
it's just a cake, you see. If we don't get it in, we'll have to eat it.
Ooh, you can send it to us for testing.
You wouldn't want to eat it, would you?
I want to ask Ruth about, she's just sending up, she's printed off the rules and regulations.
Oh yes, I think Ruth has printed off the rules and regulations and a little flyer for this newsletter. So the newsletter that'll be coming out in the printers at the moment should be dropping on your mat soon, and then of course there'll be a little flyer in there which will obviously tell you about a little bit more about the virtual show. So that'll help us to advertise it to other people. The other thing I've got, Pauline, is the quiz date and time. Do you want to sort of mention the quiz date and time? We had a quiz earlier on in the year, and we're intending to have another quiz. So we just want to see if there's enough interest. And also we've got the date, haven't we?
Yeah, we finally set a date. We managed to bounce off very kindly. I don't know what we'd do without you, Ruth. Anyway, we set it for Thursday, the 13th of May. And I sent Ruth the picture rounds today. So hopefully she's going to work her magic on those. The questions and answers are already set. So we're good to go. Ruth and I will have a couple of practice rounds. Been in touch with Trish as well. She's going to facilitate the event, so that we're not governed to just 40 minutes. We can have a night of it. Is everybody okay with 7:30 as a starting time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okie dokie. So again, a bit nearer the time, I'll send an email round, remind you all, and we'll get a Zoom link to you so that we can all join in. So hopefully it'll be a big success like last time. Yeah, and yeah, be good.
Okay, thanks, Pauline. Thank you. The other thing I've got is I had an email from a lady who through the community council, and she had some secondhand compost bins and some plant pots. And then subsequently, I sent that out with the email, of course. And then I had another email then back from Kaz then saying that she has some plant pots as well. So if anybody has a need for any secondhand compost bins, I'll send you some pictures of them. I think there's 3 of them, and also the plastic plant pots. If anybody wants any, get back to me, and I'll send you a picture of what I've got, and then we can go from there. Then, so that's that. My next thing I was going to ask if I did ask Trevor Bendall if he'd give us a talk on wildflowers, and I haven't had any information back from Trevor yet. But Bryony is going to give us a talk on sort of hydroponics. Now, at the moment, it's not going to be the next meeting. It'll be probably July or August. It doesn't really matter. But we will have a talk with Bryony probably nearer sort of the time when she's not so busy. And it will be nice to have it in the village hall, but unfortunately, if it isn't, it'll be on Zoom. But I'll get you an update on that as soon as we get a firm date on that. So that should be quite interesting, really, on hydroponics. Right. The only other thing I've got is under my any other business. Well, Sue mentioned the lady Carol at Waterwinch has got. Got a reminder for something here. At Waterwinch has got some spare. She's got some slates. It's like shaly sort of material, well, slate, but it's crushed slate, and it's around some of the buildings. And she wants to remove it. And I don't know whether it's in bags. I have asked her, but she wants to get rid of it. So the other option is she wants it to give to the garden club, so gardening group. So anybody who would like some of this slate, then she will, you can come along and collect it. As to regards whether, when, I don't know yet. I'll find out, because she was going to be on this meeting tonight, but unfortunately they had a kitchen delivery of a new kitchen, so that's held them up at the moment. So I'll get back to you with that. The other option is that if it's a lot of it and nobody wanted it from the gardening group, then we could use some of it around the old school garden, around the paths and things like that. So that's a possibility. As far as the trees, big thanks to everyone, right, for taking all the trees that we had. I mean, I put in for these Save the Oaks, it was called. There was 1,000. I put in for 1,000 first of all, thinking that I'd just get a couple hundred, but we got 1,000. So every single one of them has gone out now. They've gone all over the place. So everybody is either taking 50 or 100 or 10 or whatever, but all 1,000 of them have gone. Right, so at least they've got an opportunity.
Everybody planted them.
Well, that's out of my hand, I'm afraid. Because all I can tell you is that we've planted 200 up between the old school garden, the clay pits, and around the place here. So they should be, they've got an opportunity. I mean, it's a bit risky because obviously trees should be planted between November and March when they're dormant. But the opportunity was there, and there was no chance to, I didn't want to see them wasting really, being burned, because they were going to be incinerated apparently. So if the opportunity arises again, I'll still go for some more, but not as many, maybe not as many. If there was enough interest. I just think we should be planting more
And of
trees.
course, everybody who's going to have them has already had them.
Yes, well, yes. So yeah, I mean, I know it's not easy to plant trees anyway, and it depends if you've got the ground to do it. And but there we are. Anyway, they're out there, and Kevin has called his woodland after a well-known local person. So, you know, thank you, Kevin, for your coed Roy. Thank you. So anyway, I think, you know, there's more opportunity. Mary McGarry asked me to mention, if anybody wants to become a member of the 100 Club for the Village Hall, then please can you get back to me if you would like to become a member of the 100 Club, because they're basically where the money goes back into the Village Hall and for improvements. Right, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that Trevor Bendel mentioned to me last month is that he's got a machine that cuts sort of you know, it sort of cut pathways and things like that. So he was suggesting that we cut some more pathways through the clay pits and made a bit of a route through there. So when he gets this machine, I'll have a look and we'll see if we can do something there, because he did suggest that the footpath that runs from Ruth's place towards the back of the Village Hall is impassable in places, and he said maybe he could go along there with his this new machine he's got and be able to clean it up. So that might be something interesting. The last thing I've got is that we were going to have a video made by Jake Rawlings from regarding how to make a forest garden. He managed to get back to me day before yesterday, and he said that he'd forgotten and that he was busy, had been busy with lockdown and homeschooling, etc. So I don't know whether you want to continue with that or whether we wait now and maybe have him in the Village Hall and to carry out a little talk, because it would be interesting, I'm sure, but it would be better probably to have it live if we can rather than have a video. So I'll go with the flow there, whatever you want to do there. And that's me done, really. Is there anything anybody wants to go over, mention that I've not been clear on? Or?
Do you want to say with the pollinators if anybody else would like to come along to that?
Yeah, if, with the pollinator project and Chris Taylor on the 4th of May, if anybody else wants to come along, once we get the exact time, you know, we'll put it out there. But if anyone else would like to come along and see what this pollinator project is all about, because obviously as we're also looking at wildflowers as well, then you're welcome to come along. But I'll put that. I'll send an email out once I know what the time is. I think it was going to be 10 o'clock in the morning. I think the last thing was it going to be midday?
I think it's 12 now, isn't it, Pauline?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That was the last time that was mentioned.
Right. That's me done. I forgot to thank you all for coming along, first of all. My apologies for that. Thank you for coming along tonight. I was a bit carried away with my agenda here, but thank you for coming along, and thanks to Trish for doing this talk on No Dig. It is appreciated. That's me done. Thank you. So over to you, Trish.
And thank you to you for making it happen.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Roy. You're always organising. Okay, shall I start?
Yeah.
Please.
Ruth, just to let you know, I've made you co-host so that you can have the power. So I'm going to first of all just share my screen. So hopefully that'll work.
Just to go on the other screen.
Right, so hopefully you can see a slide now that just says No Dig Gardening, and can everybody see that?
No.
No?
It's blank, Trish.
Just black.
Okay. Let's see. Oops. How about now?
Still black.
Still black.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get my tech help.
That's the trouble with screen sharing, Pauline. That's why we've got to be careful, isn't it?
Right, yeah, yeah.
Mike's probably
I'm
saying,
just glad you and Trish are there.
My tame IT guys turned up.
Oh, good.
We did practice this afternoon.
So application.
Yeah. Okay, so that's now.
That one.
that was now.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
It's hilarious. So many times this happens that I press buttons and nothing happens. Nothing happens. I get Alec, who stands there while I press the same button. Right, okay.
You better get him ready for the quiz as well then, Trish.
Don't worry, he's always on standby when I'm okay, so yeah, I'm sure you're all wondering why on earth would anyone want to do no dig? And of course, I confess that oh, no, it's not working. There we go. The reason I did it was to save my back. You know, that was really the only thing I was interested in when I was you know, hearing about it and reading about it. What can I do to not make gardening such hard work? But interestingly, it turns out that there are lots of surprise bonuses with no dig gardening. The first being that there's less weeding, which is another of my pet hates. So I was delighted at that. You also get healthier soil and a higher vegetable yield. No need for fertilizers. And no need for strict crop rotation. So all these benefits were really intriguing to me. So I started looking into it, and I have to say that the font of all my knowledge, at least, on this is Charles Dowding. You can see his website there. He does online courses on no dig and vegetable growing, and he's got lots of different books, including actually the book of his first course called No Dig Gardening, which has just come out. Excuse me. It's 150 quid for his online course, or 225 if you do course 1 and 2. But at the moment you get a free signed book thrown in. But if you want to just go for the book, it's about 20 quid on Amazon. So first of all, I thought we'd look at what actually happens when we do dig the earth, and why we might not want to. So the first thing and the most important thing is that we break up the beneficial network of organisms that live in the soil. Now, you know, we all know about worms and what have you, kind of aerating the soil, but there are also a whole host of other bacteria, protozoans, nematodes, insects, but also fungi, and the network of fungal mycelia that go through the soil is probably one of the most important things that makes our soil healthy and helps to feed the plants. And that's that's what gets broken up when we dig the garden. And in doing so, we also destroy the structure of the soil, and that can lead to different strata, different layers that are compacted in different ways. And it stops the flow of nutrients and water. It can end up with anaerobically rotting kind of layers that that Charles Dowding calls slug pubs, because they kind of they you know, they're full of alcohol and the slugs love them. And destroying the structure means its ability to drain water efficiently is also destroyed. And finally, we expose deeply buried weed seeds, which then of course germinate, and then we have to weed the garden. So a couple of things that we don't do when we dig over the earth. One is that we don't aerate the soil, or at least we do aerate it, but we do it in a very clunky and destructive and, you know, just unhelpful way. And the soil organisms were doing a much better job of it before they were so rudely interrupted. So we might as well let them get on and do their job. We also don't make it easier for roots to grow into the soil. You know, they don't need that kind of help. That's just all there is to it. So the main thrust of no-dig gardening is learning from nature. You know, no one digs the forest. If you think of all the wild, uncultivated pieces of land, whether it be forests, moors, marshes, mountains, rainforests, whatever, you know, there's no goblins go around digging it over once a year, are there? And they get along great without any digging. And that's because the soil is constantly being fed organic material. And these materials break down and feed the soil. So leaf mold, dead and rotting trees, plants, animals, anything basically that ends up dead goes into and feeds the soil. And there's that vast network of soil organisms that I was talking about before, which help break down and distribute the nutrients. They're the ones that aerate the soil, and in total, they help to stabilize the soil's structure. So how do we do that in the garden? You know, we're just going to copy nature, really. We're going to basically leave the soil alone and keep adding nutritious stuff onto the top of it in the form of compost, manure, green manure. And what this does is it feeds the soil. So the emphasis in no dig is feeding the soil, not the plant. So what that means is the things that people normally worry about soil pH, whether there's enough nitrogen or phosphate or potassium, you know, they're irrelevant, and any kind of finicky plant requirements, they're all irrelevant because we've fed the soil and we don't need to feed the plants. And all that we do is that every year, once a year, we add some compost to the top of the soil, in effect, just like the forest does. So just in case you're worried about whether your veg beds or whatever will just keep on rising and rising, and you'll need a step ladder, you won't, because the compost itself is quite low density and it settles down to a reduced volume anyway, and then it's processed by the soil organisms and is excreted in a much denser form. So everything becomes denser and it disappears into the soil, feeding the soil so that the plants take up the nutrients. and Bob's our uncle. So all we need to do is, once we've harvested our vegetables, is twist and pull the veg. Whether if it's a root veg, you just twist and pull it out of the ground, or if it's vegetables that are above ground, you can twist and pull out what you can, and the rest, the small roots, you just leave behind, and they provide extra organic material for the soil. So the perks of no dig, there are quite a few perks, and I haven't really kind of gone into depth for all of them. But one of them is that there are no problem soils anymore, because you don't have to put them right. You don't have to you don't have to fix the soil, because you're planting into a layer of compost on the top, and then once the plant gets going, it finds its own way into the soil, and of course all the additional material will help to kind of condition and feed the soil over time, so it will change slightly over time. The only caveat to that is that if you've got very stony soil, it will still all work fine, but you might have some wonky root veg, that's all. So the benefits that you get from not disturbing the soil mean that it becomes firm and open, but not compacted. And this means that you can actually walk on your beds, and there are no compaction layers creating that anaerobic fermentation that produces alcohol for your slugs to enjoy. And there's better drainage. Our next perk is less weeding, because weeds actually germinate less in undisturbed soil, and it's digging it up that exposes a lot of the weed seeds and creates the bane of our lives. The carbon stays in the soil more because it's not oxidized to CO2 when the earth's broken up and exposed to the air. You apparently get a higher yield. So Charles Dowding has run a pair of experimental beds over 13, it might even be 14 years now. So he has identical, beds where he plants identical vegetables and just monitors lots of things, but here it's the yield. So he got kind of 100 more kilos of veg from his no dig beds than he did from his dig beds. But it's worth actually looking into his writings and YouTube videos when he talks about this, because these beds have been running over 13 or 14 years, and he's monitored all sorts of things that differ between the two beds. And he kind of experimentally shows what we've been talking about to be true. Also, on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some myths. He proves those wrong as well. So successive plantings, it means that you can, as one crop is harvested, you can be planting seedlings or even sowing seeds for a harvest later in the year. So depending on which veg you grow, which part of the year they prefer to grow in, you can mix and match and have plantings and harvests right through the year. There's less watering needed as well, because because the soil structure is better, the moisture is retained and available to quite deep down into the soil. And that, again, because there are no shatter zones, these sort of different kind of stratas between compacted and open areas in the soil, it means the drainage is constant and is not being interrupted or channeled in one direction or another. So the drainage is better, and it means that the mud, you know, it's not so muddy or I was going to say slushy, that's snow, but you know what I mean, kind of sloppy mud. You don't get so much when it rains, and you don't get pooling either. So the other perk is that you can start anytime you like. You know, you can start completely from scratch with a no-dig bed and be up and going in a single day. So I just thought I'm just going to whiz through these gardening myths, because if you want to read about it, Charles Dowding's your better bet than me trying to explain everything. So his two beds, dig versus no dig, really kind of expose the lie to this. You don't actually need to feed your plants because you're feeding the soil. Again, you don't need to rotate crops. You don't need the soil loosened so that the roots can work. You don't need to harden seedlings before you plant them, although there are some very tender plants that might benefit from a fleece covering, but he reckons to have taken any seedling you like straight from the greenhouse and put it in the ground in the no-dig beds. Some people will tell you that you need different composts for different stages of growth, and of course, you know, you only have to look in the nurseries, and there's compost for seedlings, compost for this, that, and the other. I mean, you know the score. But he says no, you don't need all those different things. You know, any compost you can put on the ground, and it will be fine. You must feed tomatoes. Well, he says, no, you don't. See the earlier point, you feed the soil and not the plant. Nutrients in compost can be washed away. Again, he says, no, they can't. They're not soluble. They get processed by the soil organisms into nutrients that the plants can then use. The myth about not watering in sunlight, again, he says that's not true either. You know, I suppose it's possible that if it's very hot and sunny, there may be some wastage due to the evaporation, but that doesn't harm the plants as people say it does often. You must de-leaf celeriac. This was a bit of a kind of random one for me, but as I love celeriac and I did try to grow them, I put it in. But apparently he says if you leave them alone, you get bigger bulbs. So there. So in order to start a no-dig bed from scratch, it's incredibly easy. You can grow seeds straight away, or insert seedlings, plants that you've raised in a greenhouse, whatever you prefer. So your first task is to create a frame on the ground. Now, this is actually optional, you don't have to, but it does make it much easier to get the amount of compost that you need into the space, and it holds it in place. And as you'll see, you can put this straight onto a lawn, or you know, any land practically, and you're good to go. So the next stage is to lay down some sturdy brown cardboard. You don't always need this. And what you need to do first is to assess the kind of weeds you've got. If you've got very strong growing perennial weeds, then you do need to say with a bramble or something, you would need to dig it out. But he sort of says, ease it out, you know, just dig a few inches down on the root, and you can leave the rest. But on most ground, you can get away with putting cardboard down or not, depending on how kind of strong your weeds are. So what he says is only if there are a lot of perennial weeds, and the cardboard must be brown. It can't be shiny, you know, with printed pictures and stuff on it. It must be sort of your bog standard brown cardboard, and you need to take all the tape and staples off cardboard. And then as you're laying it down, you need to overlap the edges by 20 centimetres. The job the cardboard is doing, or is helping to do, is to block out the light from anything that's growing underneath it. So basically you're starving whatever's living down there of light, and the cardboard itself will break down and be absorbed into the soil. More nutrients. So after that, you cover it with 15 centimetres of compost, or well-rotted manure instead, or a mixture of the two. But you know, that's quite deep, 15 centimetres, and again that is contributing to stopping any light getting to those plants underneath. And that's where the frame comes in handy. You know, it really helps to keep it in place. So then you trample it down to firm it, and then plant your seedlings, sow your seeds, and give it a water, and you're away. Weed little and often, he says. So there will be weeds, and particularly in your first year, there will be a few weeds, not as many as there would be had you dug the ground, but and he advises to sort of hand pick them when they're tiny, or use a hoe and let them die and go into the soil. So year one, you assess your weeds and decide whether or not you need the cardboard. I mean, if it's just grass, like you're going to see, I didn't put any cardboard down for one of my beds. You add 15 centimetres of compost. You then sow your seeds or plant your plants, and away you go. There'll be more weeds in year one, but when you get to year two and onwards, you just need a much smaller amount of compost to be added to the top. And you need to decide whether you do that at the end of one season or the beginning of another. And they have their pros and cons. Charles Dowding prefers to do his application of compost at the end of the season, so it overwinters on the ground, and you know, the worms and stuff have more time to get it all processed, and it's feeding them. But it does mean that you have to keep on kind of keeping on top of the weeds over the winter. And also depending on when you start doing it, because you can do this anytime you like. You can start it if you've started your bed in May or June, like I did last year. I didn't really want to be putting compost on in October, so I've done mine, you know, just now at the beginning of the season. Then you sow your plants, sow your seeds, plant your plants as before, and continue to weed little and often, and there should be much fewer weeds from now on. What it says is, even with perennial weeds, you know, when they're deprived of light, they might try a desperate kind of bid for the sunlight, as it were. But if you keep pulling those out, they eventually run out of energy, and they just kind of wither and die. So from year 2 onwards, you should get fewer and fewer weeds as time goes on. So I thought I would very quickly show you my no-dig journey. I started it in November 2019, and I had these 2 very high raised beds made with some soil that was taken from somewhere else in the garden, excuse me. And so these, you know, they're sleepers made into and enclosures that had all the, it was topsoil with turf on it, just all piled in there to make the bed. So that's kind of the, you know, the definition almost of a dug bed, in that the soil had been very, very much dug and kind of messed around. So I had read a few things, and not everyone out there is as organised about this or as knowledgeable about this as Charles Dowding, and so I did make some mistakes, quite a lot of mistakes. Oh, sorry.
Just checking that we're still here.
Yeah. Click the wrong place on the slide. So basically the bed you see on the left got a sort of half-hearted job of a no-dig process. The thing that I'd read at that point was to put the cardboard on the top, well, one of the first things that happened was our puppy decided that she would eat the cardboard. So I kept having to replace it. I don't think it did much good. The bed on the right didn't have any cardboard because I'd already planted some herbs and some strawberries in there, and so I didn't want to kind of dig them up and start again. So I just added a bit of compost on the top in the one on the right. So they were my kind of half-assed attempt, if you like. And then in May of 2020, that was when I discovered Charles Dowding, and I decided to do a raised bed from scratch using his method. So as you see on the right, you can see Alec there helping me with the bags, and you can only just see Jasmine because she's black against the compost, but she was helping too. And so the first thing that I discovered was that I had way estimated how much compost it was going to take to fill this bed. I think I got my decimal point in the wrong place or something. So that was a bit of a shock. You can see the 2 raised beds to the left. You know, the stuff in there is growing well. There's onions in the back one, along with the strawberries and marjoram, I think it was. And in the front one, there's all sorts. you know, salad leaves, cabbages, broccoli, carrots. So one of the things I did discover was that I'd planted a load of stuff way too close. But that's more of a gardening error, me blundering around, not knowing what I'm doing. So we emptied the compost that I'd got, that I supposed would fill the whole thing, and you can see up the top end that it's filled about a quarter of the space, if that. So we had to quickly get some compost, and we got a load of stuff, the Merlin's Magic from the council in Carmarthen, and it was quite strange. It was very different to the other compost, very black, but I mean, it seemed to do the trick. There's Jasmine helping again, Alec. So this is us filling the bed, and in the middle you can see where I've tramped it all down. So once you kind of fill the space, you try and squish it down a bit to compact it a bit. And then on the right, after I'm not sure how long. These are all seeds that I planted, so they're growing along quite nicely. The things at the very top on the right hand photo of the long bed are kale and some sprouts that I moved out of the tall raised bed because they were just so crammed in. And as you can see, everything's sort of growing nicely. At the end of the season, I had a lot of carrots, celery, beetroot, kale. What else do I have there? Oh yeah, yes, down there is the celeriac and a load of celery. Unfortunately, it turns out that Jasmine really loves celeriac, and she ate every single one of them. But anyway, so to get to the weed situation, so far so okay. The weeding I did, you know, as Charles said, little and often, and it didn't seem that big of a deal. But here we come to the situation, well, April 2021, April this year. So these beds have now had a winter with nothing in them, apart from at the bottom of this photo you can see some celery, actually, because the celery was weird. I didn't like it, so what I did was I just left all the celery plants in there over the winter. The interesting thing is, so there's not many weeds here. There's more up the top, and this is the original compost that I'd bought, which is sort of your normal compost that I can't remember which make it was, but compost that you get from a nursery. And then as we come down here, we're into this stuff, this Merlin's Magic stuff, and I do notice that there are fewer weeds there. So I'm not sure exactly what that was about. This is the lower bed, and again, there's not a huge amount of weeds in there. The main things that you can see are things that I had left in over the winter, like a couple of beetroot and some chard and a couple of onions there. But you know, there's a few weeds dotted around, but nothing too horrendous. But oh my goodness, this is the top bed, which is the one that got no kind of no dig treatment at all, no cardboard, no nothing, and that's what happened to that one over winter. So I think so far Charles looks like he's right about the weed situation. So So now I'm starting year 2. This is the lower raised bed, which has been cleared. I've put new compost on, and I've planted a load of seeds. This is mushroom compost. So this is a different kind again. So I'll see how that works. I've got my seeds tucked up in their fleece beds, and the right hand long bed is cleared apart from the kale which I left in there, and ready for me to plant stuff. Well, tomorrow I'll have time. And the top bed is still waiting for me to attack all those blooming weeds, and I'm basically going to have to start again with that. So I will literally, treat it as if I haven't had any stuff there at all. I'll put cardboard down, and I'll put 15 centimeters of compost on it, and basically start again. So that's kind of it, really. If you already have a veg bed and you want to convert it to no dig, then you're kind of halfway there. If you've struggled with weeds, as long as you've had it, then you might as well treat it as a new piece of land, and put cardboard down. Clear it as best you can first. Put cardboard down. Put 15 centimeters of compost on it, and plant away to your heart's content. Don't forget, after that first year, you don't have to put anywhere near that much compost on it. It's only an inch and a half of compost you need on the top, 3 centimeters. So if you have a veg bed that's already very good and you just want to carry on with it but not dig anymore, then just put a light covering of compost on. You might want to put cardboard on. Just depends on how many weeds you've already got. So that's me done. If anybody has any questions, I will try my best to answer them.
Did you introduce any sort of worms into it, or into the equation, or like a wormery, or did you just sort of?
No, I didn't, but I noticed that there are thousands of them. As I'm going around, kind of, as we were clearing what weeds were there, there was, every weed you picked up, every kind of bit of soil or compost you kind of poked at, there were worms. So there's loads of them. And that goes for the really tall beds as well.
Are you making your own compost as well then? Or I mean, I know you said Merlin's Magic and some other compost, but are you also making your own compost as well?
I am, but I've not got anywhere near I need at the moment. That's one of the good things that Charles Dowding also gets into, is how to make your own compost. I mean, I haven't covered that at all, but he does have a lot of good tips in his books and his YouTube videos, and the course for that matter. So yeah, it's definitely something I would like to get into. And he advocates not having slats, so having solid sides to your receptacle.
Because I tried the first year. We bought some soil in, and it was not from this area. And this beginning of this year, I had to dig it all out again. It seemed to compact itself. I wasn't digging it. I didn't sort of follow the Charles Dowding no dig, but I was intending not to dig it.
Yeah.
And first year, it wasn't very good at all. I mean, my carrots were just sort of really distorted, and they weren't sort of prolific. So I decided to dig it all up, and I put some sort of cow dung in there, which wasn't well rotted, but I put it in there, and then I put a thin coating of better quality soil on top. Then I seem to have encouraged a mole at the moment, and he and I are at war with each other. He's all over the place, and I haven't planted anything in there yet. I've got, still trying to struggle with him, but I just still feel like I should. And I did this year. I did put down cardboard, and then I put a layer of dung, and then I put a small layer of topsoil, and that's where I am at the moment. But just waiting for it to improve.
I think you've done the right thing. I mean, he does say that it's very difficult buying topsoil, and don't do it is the best advice, because it's rarely any good, and you just have to wait a while for it to settle, and I think sounds like you've done the right thing, really. And by the way, we've got loads of moles in our garden. The weird thing is that they tend, I don't know if it was obvious from the photos, but they actually they come up all over the place, but they've come up outside the beds.
All right.
I haven't seen one come up inside the bed yet. And cross fingers.
Yeah.
I found exactly the same thing, Trish. We certainly have loads of moles where we are, but they come up, they will tunnel under the beds.
Yeah.
But the mole hills themselves tend to come up to the side and not in the midst of them.
Yeah.
Afraid I'm an exception there. I've had a mole and actually lights coming up in my beds, my no-dig beds, and it's very annoying.
I did have one come up, the tall beds, they're like waist height. And actually, before I planted it, a mole came up in that, and I must have thought, what on earth is going on here?
It's frustrating when you're sitting in the garden or standing in the garden doing something, and the mole decides just to move around. You can see him moving around. He's almost like having a look to see what you're doing, which is really taking the mick, really.
Did you
Anyway,
have a question, Paul?
More goes on.
Yeah. We had a lovely
I think,
no-dig bed.
has Jackie got her hand up?
No, it's all right. Carry on.
Oh. Yeah, we had a lovely no-dig bed, and it was going nicely, no problem. And then a dear friend of ours decided to dig it over for us.
All right.
That's so cool. So, and it hasn't. Well, I think last year we had we used to grow beautiful runner beans there, no problem at all, lovely. And last year was about the best year we had. This was about 2 years. So he really did. Well, I was so cross, but you couldn't say anything because he thought he was doing
you
a good job. And what he was doing, he was digging trenches and got some manure, and he was putting manure in the trenches and doing it like that, you see, which wasn't what we were at. But so hopefully this year it'll come back
the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's what he does on his allotments, you see. And we thought, oh no, never mind, we're getting there. But, yeah, it does work. It's it saves so much energy and everything. Just dig a bit of a hole and put your plants in, and you're away.
I think I saw, if you look on YouTube, I mean, like Trish says, if you look on YouTube and you look at Charles Dowding, and he's got 2 beds side by side, and you just look at them and you can see, one is more prolific than the other. The plants are much better, and you can see that it does make sense, I think. And it's like for me as well, I don't really want to be digging that over and then wasting my time. So yeah, it's a sensible thing. Are there any other questions?
Jackie wants to say something.
Jackie, did you want to say
Well, I
that?
was just going to say the other thing that I suppose I do is I try and cover the soil over the winter. So I've tried this year on one of the beds to use some green manure and then dig it in. And then I've either used sort of well rotted manure. I even used straw on another one, and I found that's been quite good at just sort of almost like protecting the soil.
Yeah.
I
I think that, sorry.
Trish at the moment.
Sorry?
Trish has disappeared.
All right. Okay.
Any more questions? She
Back in a minute.
actually coming back. Just put off.
Okay. I think what I did as well this year is I covered one bed with a plastic sheet, you know, to keep the warmth in. That's one of the things that I think he says, to keep the warmth in the soil and things like that. But I think that's all I did, is just encourage my good old friend the mole to have a nice winter's, you know, warm winter bed, really.
If it's not the mold, it's rabbits for me. Trying to keep
He's
them.
lending you a hand.
All right.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. My battery went flat.
That's all right. No.
I use over the winter. I use white mustard as a green manure, which is one thing that Charles Dowding recommends. And because you don't have to dig it in, it dies down naturally over the course of the winter, and so you can just pull it out very easily and put it in the compost bin. And that just helps to protect the soil. Because it's nitrogen fixer, it feeds the soil as well.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Any other questions then? Well, thanks, Trish.
I was just going to ask how much, approximately how much it would cost for all that compost on a new bed.
I mean, it depends on the size of your bed, and having done that huge one, which was like 7 meters long by 1.5 meters wide, I wouldn't do one that big. I would do it in kind of small chunks. That took about 70, maybe 80 bags to fill it. But now, second year, it's only, I don't know, I think 10 or 12 bags. And I think then actually I probably put more than I needed to on. So, you know, if you did I don't know, 1.5 meters by a couple of meters bed, you wouldn't need that many.
Right.
I would
the other thing you were saying, Trish, is you were saying about letting things die down onto the bed in the winter time. But does Charles Dowding prefer to take the dead stuff off to put it into his compost?
Yeah, I mean, actually, mostly I wasn't letting it die down. I was letting, so the things that I left were the celery and the kale, which there's a couple of beetroots and things in the other bed. I wasn't so much letting them die down. I was letting them just be there to take up space and stop any weeds getting there. Yeah, so he definitely advocates taking your stuff out.
Excuse me.
So all that gets left behind.
Right.
Just on the amount of compost that you need, I've always tended to use a source of good, well-rotted horse manure from someone I know locally, and it's been perfect. You do tend to get more weed seeds within it, but because the structure of the soil is so much better, they're very easy to pull out by hand anyway.
Yeah.
But it's free.
Right.
Yes, if I'd known someone.
Yeah.
I would have gone to them. Although it would have taken a good many trips, I think.
Yes.
Okay then. Thanks, Trish. It was really interesting. Really well done. It's not easy doing it on Zoom, But you really did well, and really thank you for such a well, it's an interesting subject and something close to my heart as well. So I certainly don't want to dig, and I'm sure lots of other people don't want to dig. So, but it also is productive, because I think it is frustrating. For me, it was frustrating. My first attempt at sort of trying to put some soil there, and then finding out that I wasn't really that successful, and then wanting to start again. It looks like I'm going to have to start again, but to get it right. But because when you look around, when you see people who've got really good gardens, like Llungarreg is one of them, you can see the soil has been there for years, and they're just adding, like you say, just adding to it. You know, so you can see the benefits in doing that. So thanks very, very much. Really, really good. And
I would definitely recommend reading some of his books, because he, you know, obviously I've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a lot of really good information on pretty much any aspect of gardening that you would need help with,
Yeah.
and particularly compost, you know, making compost.
Yeah. But certainly when you look at your you know, your brassicas and things in that the larger bed, they look really, really good. You know, that does look really, really good to me, and it's much better than I've done anyway. So you know, hat off to you. Really, really, you've done really well. Really well done.
Through beginner's luck.
Good. Right.
We're all learning.
Okay. Right. We'll call it a day, I think. Thanks very, very much, everyone. Thanks to Trish for
Thank you,
the
Trish.
talk. Thanks to Trish for hosting it. Thanks to all of you for coming along. I know it's not easy to sort of come along to a meeting like this on Zoom, but really appreciate it. And you know, we did have some people who couldn't come along tonight, but I'm just waiting for the day when we can get together, and we can actually meet up in the hall, and when we can get out and about in the fresh air and away from this lockdown fever, whatever it is. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Good night. Look after yourself. And I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.